Hey everybody, welcome to Gardens the Untold Story. I'm Ken Somerville, my co-host Andy Lopez, the Invisible Gardener, and we're talking about worms and dirt today, man. Like Subterranean Engineers, unlocking the secrets of the earthworms. And this is something that's extremely important in your soils, is you want earthworms. You want those engineers down there. And Andy, let's get into it, brother, and talk about some worms.
You know, the I've been in business a long time, and earthworms have a very special place in my heart because I use earthworms. I have a worm farm, and if it wasn't for the worm farm, I would probably be doing something different. not doing this. I discovered the earthworms a long time ago. I remember what's it called? The canary in the bird cage.
Okay. Yeah, the canary in the mines.
Canary in the mine. There you go. They're right. They were in the bird cage, but they were in the mine. And when the canary dies, it's something wrong in the mine.
Yeah, the oxygen is gone. You're about
Yeah,
to die.
yeah. And it's I've always felt that the earthworms are just like the canary in the mine.
Yeah.
And I've always looked for earthworms, the signs of earthworms. And to me, when I got people ask me, how did you get the name Invisible Gardener? I would love to tell them, well, that's because the earthworms are the invisible gardeners and I got the name that way. No, this is after years of just doing this. Eventually, I realized that the real invisible gardeners are the soil biology. Of course, the earthworms are very much a part of that soil biology.
Yeah.
They play a big role in it, Everybody has a role in nature. It's kind of cool. In nature, you do that, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, and together we get it all done. Which is
I know
really
when
cool.
I was growing up, in the 70s and 80s, because I lived in a farming community, and people were talking about organic farms and stuff. And everybody was saying, when you start to see earthworms and you start to see mushrooms, that's when everything's working right. You're actually going organic, and that's what people had wanted, right?
So in Florida, I remember this because it was the weirdest thing I've ever gotten from a customer. Guy calls me up. You have to come here. You really need to come here. There's something wrong with the soil here. And I can't do it. He said, look, there's earthworms. I've been trying to kill them, and they keep coming back. I'm going, you were doing what? Yeah, I've been spraying for them. I spray this, I spray that. There's something wrong with this soil. The earthworms are coming back. What's wrong? And I said, calm down, relax.
I would say, go fishing, man. Just pick them up and go fishing.
Earthworms are the key. And when you mentioned mushrooms, that's the other thing I looked for. I was at the place the other day. Oh, I feel the same thing. Mushrooms are growing here. Oh my God. Keep put it inside the house. And I said, no, because I actually sprayed one of the things I spray. Well, interesting enough, see, my liquid, my machine, it's made for biology. It's a special kind of machine that does not kill the biology when you use it. Because the other kind is it's a pump that uses a metal wheel that compresses. But this particular one uses a diaphragm, and it goes like that. And the opening's a little bit bigger. The nozzle is a little bit bigger. It's meant to spray compost tea. But I figured if it can do compost tea, it can do worm tea. And so my liquid has worm eggs in it.
Yeah.
So the worms are like my backyard being populated with worms, even though I'm going to probably go poor worms. I know they get no respect. I know that it's like, but kids love it. They come all the time to the worm farm. They put your hand in there and go, oh, look at the wiggle. Oh my God. Just recently, some birds discovered my worm farm. They're in there trying to get at the worm. Oh my God, worms! Like, get the heck out of my worm farm. So anyway,
I used to actually have them in my aquaponics system. So, like an aquaponics system, you have fish and water, and they could literally live in that water as long as there was enough of dissolved oxygen in the water, because they breathe through their skin. and they could live in the water environment no problem, as long as there was enough dissolved oxygen.
Yeah, that's one reason why I bubble. There's several reasons why I bubble my liquids, because the
Yeah.
biology really loves oxygen, and the earthworms really love oxygen too. Quite regularly, I see them swimming around in there. What are you doing? Because the eggs did decide we're going to hatch now, right now. We're going to do it. I go, you could at least wait until you're in the ground, that kind of stuff. But to me, the secret, my secret is the earthworms. My secret sauce is the earthworms. The earthworms have made it so simple for me to feed the soil and the plants the trace minerals, because the earthworms are very, very good, really rich. Earthworm castings, which is the earthworm poo-poo, are really, really rich in over 70, 80 trace minerals, maybe even more. Because these guys go through that, and the biology inside the earthworm is very cool, because I was studying it for a little while. Did you know that two creatures have the same type of internal mechanism for biology? Can you guess which ones they are? You already can guess one.
Earthworms?
Yeah, what's the other one?
Probably something like birds.
Elephants.
Elephants. Okay. Well, we know elephant manure is actually really, really healthy.
Yeah. They both have the same system of pushing it through, coming out the other end. And Rudolf Steiner really liked cows because they have a similar system. But I found it very interesting that the smallest earthworm and the biggest elephant both do the very same thing. They just go through it. The food goes right through them. Just goes right through them. They keep on plowing it out, and that's really cool because they don't really digest it. It's just to make it more available to the biology. The rest of the biology can take that and they pass it on to the plants. So I learned that a long time ago, that because that Mother Nature's, I call them Mother Nature's plowman, because they constantly digging through there, and they're one of the reasons that they actually bring oxygen down. They actually do the oxygenation, aeration thing.
Aeration, yeah, because when they're traveling through the soil, they're breaking tunnels in there. You're getting oxygen that flows down, and then if it rains, the water can come down. It's like so extremely important to loosen up your soil, and that's what the earthworms are there to do, is loosen up that soil and allow those nutrients to cycle properly. Because you face it, without enough oxygen and water in those lower areas in your soil, you don't have the biology, you don't have the needed components, which is oxygen and water, to have your biology activate and really get going and producing more and more life. So that's why one of the reasons the earthworms are so important.
I talk a lot about a water filter.
Yes.
And it's really, I've become a fanatic about it now, where people have to sign the form saying, either I'm going to get a water filter, and if I don't get a water filter, it's not my fault if everything continues to die, no matter how. The best compost in the world. I get Layton's compost. It's absolutely amazing. You put that in. But you keep watering it with the city water, that'll kill everything as well, too.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's designed to do. Like, it goes through the processing. They're purposely putting in the chemicals to kill biology.
Yep.
Because you drink that water, it's bad water, and it gets in your gut, and all of a sudden you're sick.
And people realize, I always tell them, okay, so let me get this straight. You have a water filter for your kitchen, water filter to take a bath in, but you don't seem to care about a water filter for your property. And you're calling me because you have a problem with your property. So what are we going to learn from this? Right? What are you going to pick up from this little discussion here? Well, maybe I should get a filter for the property. Bingo. Right? Mm-hmm. I was just at a place today. The guy says, I still don't understand why we need a water filter outside. And I said, doesn't it rain? Mother Nature, if you just turn off your sprinkler system and let Mother Nature take care of you, if it rains, fine. If it doesn't rain, everything dies.
Yeah, and if you're watering your garden, I water my garden every day, Can't figure out why it's always sick and dying, but hey, well,
Yeah,
I'm putting water on there.
yeah, yeah. To me, it's mind blowing because, for example, this person I was talking to today, every day the water's on. Every day for years and years, sprinklers come on,
Yeah.
and it's not a coincidence that he doesn't have any earthworms. He doesn't have any biology there. It's a $3,500 water bill every month because there's no structure in the soil. One of the things the earthworm does is it breaks everything up. Not only lets air and so forth in there, but it allows the building process to work. The way you make soil, you have to have organic matter. You have to all these things have to be, and you need the oxygen and you need the water. So if you have oxygen and you don't have, and if the water is toxic, the whole system breaks down. The whole thing breaks down. And unfortunately, the ones that pay the most are the root systems of the trees. That's for you, or for me. I, I ring a lot myself. My head rings a lot. John. I go, oh yeah, what happened? You know, and unfortunately, that's what happens because I get a lot of calls about trees, figures, right? I used to get a lot of calls about roses, but now people are just letting the roses go. And I'm going, and he had sprinklers on sprinkling the roses. I said, roses don't like overhead watering. Plants in general don't like overhead watering. I mean, they don't mind Mother Nature's watering, but that city water that they get destroys the natural biology that's covering their leaves right off the bat. It destroys the whole environment that is meant to have biology, sterilizes. And I love to talk to whoever the person that's decided we're going to add chemicals to the water and make it a health issue.
Yeah.
Right? Right? And it's like fluoride when you brush your teeth, right? You get rid of your biology in your mouth. Why autopots? What is this? Is that the name of the show?
I'm not sure. Oh, you clicked it off.
Stop it.
Why autopots? I know what autopots are, but maybe they're using an autopot which has, you know, a sprayer which you know, runs water automatically through it. But yeah, I don't use an autopot.
I think what you're talking about is Ola, OLLAS, Ola. And I've been doing some podcasts on it, and I've been doing a workshop on it. I was just at a gardening club and explaining to people, here's a system that's been developed by the ancient people, and you know, all around the world. They've all seemed to develop the very same thing. Basically, clay pots that get buried in the ground. You're in trouble now, aren't you? I can tell.
Okay, yeah, it's a conversation between Lil and the wife and I can grow, and Lily was saying she hasn't had to water, and they were asking why are you using autopots, which automatically water, but we've had so much rain here for almost a month now. My basement, I have two dehumidifiers going in my basement now, and it's finally starting to dry out. My humidity in my basement is 41%. My upstairs in my house is like over 51, 55% in areas. I'm telling you, I've been trying to start a new show, a new series, but I have to do this basement and get it all fixed before I can even start. So it's like, you know, fate. Okay, I just put it up to fate, Andy.
Over here, we have a slightly different problem, is that it doesn't rain.
Well, you guys are on a heat wave. Like I know, I looked at the fire situation in you know, North America here yesterday, and you guys, you know, south of me, probably, you know, 80 or 100 miles,
100-something degrees.
Yeah, like all over the world, there's people dying.
England.
And, yeah, Spain, England, France, all kinds of people, you know, thousands of people around the world that, you know, they don't are dying from the heat. And here we're actually been getting so much rain. I think more people would be drowning than dying from heat.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things where I would like to move from here, but I don't want to go from the frying pan into the frying pan, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, just don't move to Death Valley, Andy. Okay.
The Death Valley has become Hell Valley. Literally, it's just
yeah, it's
it's
crazy.
really bad over here. Then the Colorado is losing water, and that's supposed to water everybody, and then we have all these dams that are drying up, and it's a real big mess going on. So it's hard for people to be thinking about earthworms at the moment. I
Well,
feel about that.
yeah, it is. The thing is, when it does rain, like, if you have enough earthworms, if you have enough biology, on your property, and like people like Gabe Brown, you can look at some of his videos where, they had, I think it was 18 inches in 2 hours. And yet
Ouch.
the next day they could go out with their tractors and they weren't sinking in because all that water had actually come down into their soil structure and filled up their soil structure, and all their aggregates were, amazing. And when you have these dry spells, it can feed the life, in the soil, the biology in the soil, and your plants. It's so much better if we have biology. Like, there's areas in the world that don't get a lot of rain, yet they have vibrant green life, in their fields and their forests, because the morning dew, the difference in the temperature creates a dew point, and that water goes down in their plants, it goes down into their soil, and it's enough to feed the soil. But we've killed all the biology that, is putting those aggregates in and is able to draw that water in. So
Yeah.
we're our own worst enemy, and we have been, for 100+ years.
Yeah, and the water just runs down to the next door neighbor.
Yeah.
None of it stays. Most of the people here I have encountered have been total. I was going to say idiots, but you get really close to when you totally ignore your property, ignore the health of your soil, and then you realize your trees are dying, but you just haven't noticed them. You haven't taken the time to look and see. Well, look, they look awful to me. When I drive by places, I'm going, that tree is dying, that tree is dying, that tree is dying, that tree is dying. And even though they're watering like crazy, the tree is still dying.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, very sad because there are so many systems that Mother Nature puts into place for us to have. When I lived in Florida, it rained every day, pretty much every day, but the water didn't run down. It soaked it right in. When I lived in Costa Rica, the water got soaked right in. See the beach joke made up.
Yeah, let me bring up Serena.
Laughing,
She made this up at a couple of days ago. I think it was at like 1 a.m. or something. Beet farmer. The beet, I have an overabundance of beets and no idea what to do with the surplus. Any ideas? Carrot farmer. Beats me. I don't care at all what you do with it.
Oh God, I think she's doing some of the weirdest drugs on the planet. I think I'm pretty sure.
Well, Serena's amazing with some of the jokes she comes up, and I kind of butchered it with the way I said it, so that I've left it up on screen. You guys can read it and make it sound better. But thanks, Serena, for always coming up with some new jokes.
So one of the things about earthworms, besides, by the way, there are literally several different thousand varieties of earthworms.
Yeah.
From all around the world. And I went through a variety of different worms that would be good for my worm farm. There are some worms that are not good for that. They're real tiny. They won't do it. So I ended up with African red wrigglers. Those guys will go through everything. You lie down, they eat you a leg before you know it. Oh, God.
Like army ants. They're army worms.
The army worms, right. And so the one of the things that the worms do, they recycle. They're very good at recycling nutrients. That's the key to it right there. See, take these
Yeah.
extra beats. That's the key to it, because you'll find that there's always a lot of nutrients left over, and it has to go someplace. Otherwise, Mother Nature will dispose of it. Other creatures will come and use it, or it will run down the stream. It'll get lost. So you want to keep the nutrients you have, but also important too is that there's also waste. There's when you have I have a worm farm. If I don't give it a bath, the worms will die because there's so much waste coming out, whether it be worm poo or other things that the worms eliminate. And the process of see, it's not a compost setup that I have, because that's different. So I feed the worms. If I put too much food in it, the food starts to rot because the worms can't get at it fast enough, and then the whole thing goes backwards. And so, but in the ground, you really are providing a way for the worms to recycle for you. So I'm going to do a raised bed. I'm going to do a raised bed because my soil over here is so bad. It's not soil. It's actually when there used to be a road here, so it has that stuff, that white sand that puts down for the road.
Yeah, road base.
Yeah, and that's what's down there. You go a little bit of the soil, so the roots, they can't even start seeds there, because seeds hit that and go, no, I'm not going to grow in there. So I'm going to do a raised bed.
A lot up here, Andy, because we have a real clay soil. And it's that the farmers see it all the time with that hard pan layer.
Yeah.
And it really is hard for the farmers to break through that. Once they've, been over their field so many times, it's really hard to break through that hard pan that they've created themselves.
Yeah. The way I deal with hard pan, believe it or not, is animal manure. I need to feed my bin this morning after the rain.
Yeah.
Do it now before it's too late. I learned in Florida they have hard pan too, and over here it's more predominant here. And hard pan can cover a whole big area, and it's called hard pan because the clay becomes like porcelain. No oxygen goes through there, no water goes through there. If the roots are down below the hard pan, so that root system starts to die out too. And so it's a tough one, but you don't really have years and years to break it down. So I've learned to use manure tea. Manure tea is so biologically alive that the stuff just eats straight through it. You see, and so I've learned. And so if you have a hard pan, you can use manure tea. Literally make a tea and pour it down. You'll see it. You'll see within weeks it starts to soften the hard pan. It finds a little ways to get in there. Then the worms will show up sooner or later, start digging down. A lot of times I use a post hole digger so I can go down, make little tunnels so that the liquid can go down deeper. You'd be surprised. Some things are like 10, 20 feet deep, these hard pans. And that's what the heck? What the heck is that, right? That means that it's been like that for years and years and years, and nothing grows underneath it. So you have these giant trees that the roots are, half of them are underneath this stuff. And if you were to dig that, you'll find that the roots are totally empty. There's no root hairs on it, nothing. It's not working. So it's amazing that the trees are still surviving when they lost a very important part of their system, which is the roots.
Well, and it's like that's what they use. Like I used to watch a guy called Let's Dig 18, and he built dams for a living. And he would look for that clay, that special clay, and build dams out of clay, compact it so that the water couldn't get through the dam. Well, that's what's happening to a lot of our soils, and the rain can't go through, can't replenish our water supply, can't replenish our aquifers because it can't get through that hard pan clay layer. So for the farmers, you're harming yourself. Like, I don't agree with a lot of tillage. I think that, if you're breaking through that first, half an inch maximum, just breaking up, the plants you don't want there, makes it a little bit easier to plant. But, any deep tillage, you shouldn't be doing it. If you want deep tillage, Allow the worms to be there because they'll do deep tillage for you. They're free labor.
Without damaging the rest of the property. When you rototill,
Yeah.
it causes more damage than good because you're destroying the structure that's already set up there, and it takes a long time for it to recover. The only way it will recover if you get the human beings out of the picture,
Yeah.
because we're very good at causing the exact opposite that we think we would want. So I've
Well,
learned
you
from
think of
experience.
the Great Plains, where they would ride a horse through it, and the grasses were as tall as the horse, and the soil was 30, 40 feet deep,
Easy.
and it was the rain would fall and it would just go right
Look
into
right
that
in.
soil. Now we've killed it. We've killed it. So here we got a question. Okay, no.
That's not
Okay,
it.
well, what do you call 100-year-old antique? Yes. Okay, Serena. All right, we'll hit the question now.
Okay.
How do you, oh my goodness, how do you pronounce that? How do you feel about broad forking? I love broad forking because you're just breaking the soil. You're not, digging it up. You're just breaking it because you're putting the tine down into your soil, and then you're just tilting it, and you're breaking that tension, and you're allowing air and water to get in there. You're not flipping the soil up, so you're not killing the aggregation, those little clumps that get in there that are the lifeblood and the apartment buildings of the biology. You're just cracking it. So I love broad forking.
So if you really want it to be,
Nancy.
if you really want it to be effective, you'd put a layer of the best compost you can, and then broad fork it, and then you'll find, and then when either rains or water, that the openings will allow things to soak through in there, and then you get even faster result than just leave it alone. If you leave it alone, the biology will eventually work its way down in there, especially if it rains. But you want to speed up the process, definitely use compost. If you have access to animal manure, just throw animal manure on top. It'll start to soak itself in there. You'd be surprised how fast they come back.
Well, and the thing is, that's copying nature's way of doing things, because the animal, the deer, the moose, the buffalo, the bear, the cougar, whatever, is going through, and it's doing its business as it goes, and you're getting that naturally, and it does start breaking up your soil, because what's it do? Oh, it adds a whole bunch of nutrients. It adds a whole bunch of biology.
Yep.
And then it eventually it's going to add a whole bunch of worms. Like it's amazing to see a field that's dead. Okay, just dirt. Okay, and like Andy, you've experienced this in your yard, where all of a sudden, over a year's time, geez, this was hard pan and nothing was growing there and nothing was alive, and all of a sudden you're going, oh hey, I got earthworms, and oh, my soil, I can plant here now. It doesn't take a long time if you allow nature. And Andy, of course, you've been doing sprays, so you've increased the speed of all of it. But yeah, that manure, natural manure, can really help if you don't overdo it. And if you're putting on 6 inches of cow dung, then you're probably you're being we call a moron. You put more on than you really needed.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, because most farmers shouldn't be farmers.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm saying, they have no idea what they're doing, and so they just plow, destroy. A good farmer never destroys the soil. A good farmer allows Mother Nature to do her thing, and that's what's so really good about it. You learn that if I did this in this way, Mother Nature will just take off. Or if I did this, it'll be not in my lifetime, but I would see it. And that's very important to understand. And one of the things about the earthworms is that they're really heavy water management system, which is really cool. We talked about this a little bit, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how not only does it aerate the tunnels, but the water goes in there and helps to aerate and brings the air and water together. What is this? Rip? Somebody happened? Oh yeah, Lane Ingram. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get to meet her in person.
Yeah, neither did I, but I did get to talk to her on our channel.
Yeah.
We had her on a couple of times. So
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful woman. She did so much for forwarding this knowledge,
Right.
and we're trying to take it even further and further now. But yeah, and like Silly Lily says, don't be a moron, Leighton Morrison. Okay.
So,
he's the one that came up with that.
Yeah, he did, and he did. And I talked to him on a regular basis because I'm constantly referring him for compost and for the mulch. He makes it. He did this company a really good favor by showing them how to properly make mulch. This mulch is like really a super compost product. It's steaming when you get it. The mycelium is coming out of it. You hear a little organ music, banjo music going on. You go, hey, this. Because I have a few people, they didn't want to buy the compost. I said, okay, we'll buy the mulch.
Well, that's what you call redneck compost and redneck mulch, man. When it starts singing and playing the banjo, okay, it's redneck, okay?
Well, it doesn't have to be redneck. I know a lot of hippies that play banjos. And I never met a hippie redneck. A redneck hippie? I never met a redneck hippie. I met lots of rednecks. And I don't like calling them that, and they don't like being called that either because
I don't know, Andy, because I think I'm a redneck and I'm also a hippie. I got the long hair, okay?
Yeah, and you're a redneck. Oh my God, you're a redneck.
I'm in Alberta. We're all rednecks up here, okay?
So one of the things about earthworms is that they're microbial boosters. And that's one of the things I like about earthworms, is that they bring all this biology with them. They have so many different kinds of beneficial soil microbes inside their stomach. That's why I like elephant. That's why Rudolf Steiner liked the cows, because they have all this biology that they bring to the table. But you don't get that from a lot of different types of animal manures. They have a certain amount of biology, and that's it. A horse is very, very weak in that area. A chicken is just chicken manure. It has its own biology, but it doesn't have anything else in there. I like llama manure and rabbit manure, but again, it's very limited to the different biology is there. Whereas if you're dealing with earthworm castings, and to me, earthworm is a lot easier to grow than elephants. I was out in the sun too long to the garden. Redneck. Okay, who said that?
That's too funny.
So I forgot what I said. What did I just say? I don't know. Now I got. So to me it was so when I lived in Florida, I used to drive around to all these different places, bring in brothers Bar and Bailey Circus. They would ask me to come by and get their elephant manure. They wanted to give me lion and tiger manure, and I said no, thank you, I don't want it. I think because it's a very different type of manure, and you could get they have there's a problem with their they can get worms and stuff like that passed on to humans. If you use it, because you really have to learn how to heat up your compost. One of the things about making compost, you have to get it at a certain temperature. If you don't heat it up at that temperature, you will pass on other types of diseases that are there because it didn't get hot enough to sterilize that. See, you know what I mean? So animal manure, that meat eaters are the ones that have that problem with it. I don't have any problems with cows and sheep and deer, because they're not meat eaters. But if you're a meat eater, then you have this problem with the worms that you have to definitely learn how to make compost.
Thermophilic compost, you need to get it to a higher temperature. But Andy, and I hate to dispute things, but if you're doing a compost and you aren't going thermophilic, there is that chance, whether it's a vegetable compost or it's meat eater, it is. But you're not supposed to be composting meat, because there is that higher potential for problems. So, if you learn how to do compost properly, you're not going to have to worry about it. But the likelihood of you're doing it right, unless you're somebody like Leighton Morrison, who's been doing it for years and really truly understands what you're doing and is looking at it through a microscope, you're probably not doing your compost properly. You're not maintaining the temperature long enough, etc.
Yeah.
So, be cognizant of the possibility, especially if you're buying a bag compost from somewhere, that you may want to, not, use it for, how do I want to phrase this?
Food, for vegetables.
Well, no, because you're going to be using it for, you're not putting a compost in your garden because you're not growing food, and you're going to use the compost, but maybe put it out early in the spring, 6 weeks or 8 weeks before you're going to be planting, to allow the biology to truly work through it and make sure that stuff has already been worked through from the biology. Don't just throw compost on and pluck your seeds in.
That's a big problem I've learned from experience, because to me, when I started gardening, compost was I have to make my own compost. I would go out and buy stuff and come back, and the plants would look at it. You're giving me what is this? Especially I've done it so many times. Okay, this is a very good compost. The label says it's take it home, and everybody's going, no, I don't think so. And so I've learned that nothing you buy in the store that's been in the bag sitting for however long, it's going to be biology rich.
Yeah,
it may have a good. So I buy this one product that's made from. Well, it's got earthworm castings in it. Okay, right off the bat, it's a potting soil. It's got bad guano. It's got several other different. That's a type of bird. I forget the name of it now. It's a seagoing bird, like seagulls, and then it has all kinds of other different sources of rock dust added to it. But it's the compost is that, besides the water and the worms, the compost is the key. If you don't, so that's why I can't make the compost myself, because I would make the compost myself, and I make the best compost, and I would use it. That's the way it always has been. But now when I buy compost, I specifically go to Leighton for his compost, because it's difference in night and day. Give you an example. So we had one lady, a customer, olive trees, all kinds of other plantings and stuff like that. I've been spraying them, but I've been telling them you need to buy this compost. They went to the store, they bought compost, and they added it, and it's not working. Well, it's not. That's not compost. It's not a living. It's in a sealed bag for starters.
Yeah,
that should tell you something. If anything alive in there, it's probably have a mask on, holding its breath until you open the air. No, it's nothing alive in there, and they actually sterilize it. I buy a big box store compost just so my compost doesn't to pick on and beat up and bully. Right on.
I like that. And okay, if you're buying that store-bought compost, if you can, put it out and compost it in your backyard for another 30 days before you use it, because that's really going to help. But we've got a couple of questions, Andy, so I'd like to hit them.
Go for it.
What about ProMix HP? Is it not good? And I would say yes. It's not the best thing that you can use.
No. Look at it this way: if you was to feed it the worms would die.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big indicator. So if you have any type of stuff you buy in the store, if you happen to have some worms, give them a little bit and see what it does. If they flourish and they start going nuts, this is great. Fine, buy as much of that as you want to. But and you can't go by the labels. I hate to bring this up, but I had this one customer who was a graduate of Elaine Ingram's too, which is surprising to me. But the reason why it's surprising, because she was working for a chemical company and in charge of making the chemicals for their use. She gave it up. She wanted to go organic. She hired me to help her out. But she went and bought this fertilizer, which Excuse me. I have sinus infection, so I get congested. Oh yeah, and it says on the bag, does not that the earth that the soil biology eats the product, eats the chemical fertilizer, and breaks it up into ammonia. Totally safe. Doesn't kill the earthworms or the soil biology. And I took me 5 minutes to disprove that it is bad. The thing was is that it didn't kill the earthworms or the soil biology right away. Use it over a period of time, changes the pH of the soil. The pH is wrong, the soil biology would be wrong too. It gets rid of the soil biology and the worms. You're not going to have the soil biology or worms if you keep using this product. So a good indicator is the worms. If the worms like what you buy from the store, then it's okay to use. If they don't like it, then either you have to prep it somehow, blend it in with your compost, let it cook together, or make some compost from it, because you can buy something in the store and add things to it full of biology and make it cook up and make it something useful. That's what I did today. It's late in listening. So I bought a yard of his compost, and I bought another product, which basically is sold as the potting soil, organic potting soil, which has some biology in it, but I mix the two together. You have twice as much of the product that you can use because it also makes it a great mulch.
Yeah.
And so you learn
that's a good point. You can help, that cheap stuff with some good stuff.
That's what you have to do.
Mix it together. So let's go to Serena's question here, Andy. What's the best way to rebuild nutrients in soil in a green stalk or garden tower? What ratio of worm castings, biochar, and compost is the right amount to use? You want to answer that one?
Offhand, I would say you don't want compost straight, you don't want biochar straight, and you don't want earthworm casting straight. Earthworm castings is probably the one that you could do straight if you wanted to, just grow it straight. So what I would do is it depends what you're growing, because a lot of times the plants make a big difference as to what it is, right? If you're growing tomatoes, or you're growing lettuce, or vegetables, or fruit, or pot, or whatever else. So the thing to do is keep track of the blend that you make, and see which one you get the best results. Because one of the things that you have to find out is the pH. So I know off the bat that earthworm castings has a very acidic pH. Biochar is probably neutral. And what was the other one?
I don't know. I got rid of the question, but I think Andy, she was asking more for percentages,
right,
on how much she should be using, and
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, right? Which is the right amount? The way you can determine the right amount is you take notes of what amounts you mix. Because what you want to do, if it maybe you may have a little device that tells you the pH. That's what you want to do. You want to get the pH slightly acid. So these products here, they all may be already in the right pH, in which case you can blend it, but you have to figure out, because what happens is if you have too much of one product, like the compost is not made to be used straight. You can't grow in it straight. You have to learn how to blend it with either the soil that you have or something else to mellow it down to be able to grow right in it. Most plants will not like to grow in straight compost, and you have to amend it with something a little more mellow to mellow it down. So what I would do is I would say 1 part each, start with that, measure the pH down the road, and see what cut. If the pH is like 6-8, bingo. You know you have the right pH, more than likely. But then again, it depends on the plants. It depends on how drainage. You may want to add something that allows for better drainage, because all those things can hold water. So you want to have something like perlite or vermiculite, which will kill the worms, or something else to aerate it more, to allow more air and water to flow through. Otherwise, it gets too compacted, too hard. I learned that from my experience with dealing with my worms. I have to take them out once a year and put new stuff in, because their compost gets so compacted that the worms don't like it in that kind of environment.
Yeah, there's too much worm casting and not enough bedding for them.
Right. So you want to add
Yeah.
some organic matter to it. That's the one thing that's missing. So you may want to add something like any. So you can grind up leaves. You can grind up, right. That's the carbon. Biochar is okay, but you want it in a form that actually adds some structure to your mixture. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. I think it does. Like, biochar is not a carbon source that can be used for
Yeah.
plants. It's basically, it's a hotel for the biology
Yeah.
and for micronutrients that are stored will get stored there. So you want to have just a mix, Serena. There's no, we can't give you like, okay, if you're gonna have 1 pound of this, you need 1 pound of that, and you know that's not what nature does. You want a mix, of all the different things. It's really hard to give you an exact thing. Like, even Leighton Morrison for his horizontal soil system, it's a third, a third, a third, and then 10%. It's 30% sand, 30% silt, 30% clay, 10% organic material, and then you can add biochar into that as well. So it's, think of it as more of a volume metric, and you're using a tower. Are you dumping all that dirt out, mixing all brand new stuff to put into it,
I don't
or
think so.
are you making it one mix for the next 10 years and just keep adding biology into it? Because if you have a decent mix, and somebody was asking about is silica really worth it? Well, guys, silica is sand. If you're getting the rough sand, you're getting all kinds of silica in that sand. And so, yeah, silica is very important. But if you have no sand, you're going to have to add, silica from a company, there's all kinds of different products out there. But if you add sand, silt, and clay and organic material into a mix, you can keep that mix for years and years and years, because 1 grain of sand can, and this is from a cannabis statistics, 1 grain of sand can feed 1 acre of cannabis. Okay, 1 grain of sand. But the caveat, you have to have the biology.
Break it down.
Yes. Without the biology, it doesn't get broken down. It doesn't get, made plant available. It really is all about the biology.
The way it works with Mother Nature, she's never uses just one thing. She's always blending things up.
Yes.
And that's the key. You don't want to figure out. You want to find a blend that you can make that works for this, but maybe a different blend for that. But the same blend will work for a variety of things. But again, you have to learn what type of plants you're growing, what type of environment. What I would do is say, where does this plant normally come from? And think about the country that it grows in. That gives you a real good idea of what it really likes.
Yeah.
Okay?
So
and that's what's
Lily's
here.
got a question, Andy.
Okay.
Andy, is a hot compost too hot for worms? I can't see them in a cold one, or I can see them in a cold one.
Oh yeah. You can kill them if it stays hot all the time. Literally, what happens is when you're making compost, the worms will migrate down and let it get hot. Then eventually, as it starts to cool off, they'll migrate back up again. But they're not in there while it's cooking.
No, they can't survive there. Like, you look at the Johnson Sioux bioreactor, and what they do is when they put it together, they let it cook through its cycle, and then once it starts to cool off, they will literally add the worms. And I can't remember the temperature. You can look it up online, for the Johnson Sioux, but it has to drop to a certain temperature. Then you would add the worms to finish off the compost. They cannot survive in that high temperature thermophilic compost. So that's the answer to that one, Lily. And there's one more question, and that's the silica one. Okay, is it really worth it? And yes, but I would use sand instead of buying products. But you know, a lot of people, it's a lot easier to buy, you know, the CalMag, which, you know, I hate to say it, but CalMag is a farce. I found out it, and I used CalMag for 2 years, and I just found out how much it wasn't what it was said to be. But that's like, you know, Andy, do you remember back in the day when everybody went, oh, we got to use back-guano, and then all the cannabis all tasted like back-guano. I think there was a more of the Leighton Morrison "Don't Be a Moron," and everybody was being a moron with back-guano. So
Well,
some things are good, some things are
I
just
like bad guano, but again, my instinct says don't just use bad guano. You want to blend it. You want to blend it with everything else you can get your hands on, and that's the key. Don't just do one thing. I know lots of friends are chemists. You need calcium, iron, magnesium. Yeah, what you need is 96 different trace minerals. You get that together.
Biodiversity.
Right.
The more diverse, the better.
The right proportion and the right amount. Bingo. Everything will grow with it. But if you get too, it gets real toxic if you have too much of any one thing. Calcium, too much calcium binds that things up. Iron becomes toxic. So magnesium, all these things become toxic. It's just just a little bit more than you have. That's why you don't want to get in the habit of getting these things. You want to get in the habit of growing things that make those things for you.
Yeah.
You have it.
And we've mentioned C90 on the program a lot, and that's your sea salt, and it has silica in it as well. You know, so there's another way, and it's a natural product.
Yeah, and rock dust does too. Rock dust has a certain amount of silica in there. All of it. All the rock dust has a certain amount of silica in there.
Yeah. And then Serena says, important. How do gardeners say thanks? Thank you very much.
Oh, dear me. So wait. So I got a few more things I want to say before we go, because I think we're going to run out of time real soon.
Yeah, we got just over 7 minutes. Yeah.
Did I go too fast? Did I go too fast?
I think Andy just had a moment, guys.
So, because I had wrote down here that they're climate fighters. By taking organic matter, putting it into the ground, they're helping to control the climate. The same thing with plant growth. It stimulates a root development. So these are really good gardeners. These guys know what they're doing. Toxin indicators. We talked about the bird cage. Well, this is the bird cage. If they die, and you're going to go, something's wrong here, and you need to figure it out, because you want the worms to flourish. And if they start dying on you, then you have to look at why they're dying and stop it. Usually it's a city water. Can Andy repeat that?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Oh, what? I can repeat it. You think this is not a language? And of course, I had to put down they're part of the food chain, because there are lots of birds and animals, creatures love these guys, and they'll eat them. But healthy earthworm populations save agriculture billions of dollars by eliminating the needs for chemical fertilizers. That's one of my best things about the worms, is that they're the ones that Mother Nature's gardeners. They're the ones who provide all the mixtures together for you. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is have a wide range of plants, wide range. Mother Nature doesn't do one thing. She doesn't plant in a straight line. She doesn't do that. I love farmers that get whoosh, and a pest to go one to the other, and they all get the same disease, and they all have the same problem. So that's not the way to grow. And these are not farmers. They're just people making money, selling food. And the food is totally useless, because if you eat junk, you're gonna die from junk food poisoning, whatever they call it, right?
Yeah. Now, Andy, and it's not work, it's worm. Can one worm survive? I know how worms breed. It's they rub up against each other.
Oh yeah, one worm can survive.
See the band in behind you, Andy, on this image. That's their breeding sac.
Yeah.
And you have to have two worms rubbing together. So I do not believe that if you have just one worm, that it's going to survive.
There depends on, again, there are so many different types of worms. So there's one particular worm that cuts itself in half, and you have two of them. How's that?
Some worms will survive when they're cut in half, some won't.
Right,
Some
and the ones that
there's a percentage, and
there's one worm particular that cuts itself in half, ends up splitting into two, and then they do that.
yeah, I don't know that they're hermaphrodites, right? So they're one sex, but I know that in worm breeding, temperature, water, amount of water in your mix is very important. And like I know, like people talk about avocado tech, and then they put an avocado on their soil, and the worms come up, and it's this big clump of worms. Well, that's like a worm orgy in there if you're doing that stuff.
Yeah, my worms love bananas. I go to the store, and the lady says, "You eat a lot of bananas." I said, "My worms love the banana." I just cut the opening on both ends, leave it alone, and they go right in there. And the whole thing is just one big earthworm.
Yeah,
going on. They love anything that's soft because they go straight through that. Any kind of fruit or vegetable, they will not go through garlic or any spicy stuff. They won't do that. And the meat, they seem to leave it alone. You have a different kind of worm that shows up for them. The grub will come from the flies and do that. So that's a show for today, guys. I think did we write down what we're going to do next week?
Yeah, just let me grab my sheet of paper and my glasses, because when I printed this off, I didn't reset my printer, and I don't know if you guys can see how small that is. Right? So I got to put on my glasses so that and hold it close. Immunity by design, permanent fixes for pests and diseases. So
that's what we're going to do.
It's a list that Andy sent me a list for titles. And yes, Serena, my love, it is. Oh, wrong one. It's all about the biology. Yeah,
that's right. It always has been. The whole planet. It's all about the biology. The whole planet. You get rid of the biology, you have similar like all these lifeless planets everywhere. No biology.
Yeah. Well, and with no carbon, and they're taking the carbon out of the air, but oh my gosh, we need carbon to survive, guys. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
and
the
then
whole
for
thing about
tomorrow, on the show with the chiropractic is sexy, they're talking stress, spine connection, cortisol, chiropractic, and survival mode is the title for chiropractic is sexy tomorrow. So you guys are going to want to check that out. And Santa, I don't have a red hat on today. Okay.
yeah, you kind of remind me of Santa.
That's on a good day, Andy.
I didn't know Santa was a redneck.
Yes, Santa is a red. I got a red shirt on too. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys next week. Take care now.
Okay, guys, and you want to help the channel out? Don't forget, there's a join button on YouTube. You guys can become a defender of the biology, help support the channel, and thumbs up, comment, share, and mulch love.
I thought it was a joint button. I could clicking and nothing.
Yeah. Well, they in Canada, people can actually send me an ounce at a time, and I even have my post office box in the description, so if you're in Canada, you can ship an ounce at a time, as long as it's grown with biology, grown in the soil, and no chemicals, please. All right, guys. Peace out, everybody. We love you all.
Love you,
you lurkers in the background like Candy Camus, we love you too.
Take care now. Bye.